Hello, people. I decided we haven't been live on Stephen Avery Project in a while. So I would pop on and see if there was anything anybody wanted to discuss. There is nothing new. I did not come on here because there's been a development. Just coming on to see if there is anything anybody would like to talk about today. Hey, Jenna. And Christy's already here. Yeah, this was I wasn't planning on coming on. Just was sitting here and it's like, oh, I'll go on live. Maybe people will be around today if they're off of work for the holiday. So, hey, Alex and Heather. So, and Jill and Tim. When is Stephen getting out? Shauna asks. Not anytime soon. The our legal process is stupid. So if the earliest he would get out would be like the end of this year, unless it's proven who actually did it. So let's see, scrolling through to see if there's Brandy, I know, can't see me too well because of the light in the background. That's a good thing. You don't need to really see me, right? So you could just have the big and the reason the light is like that in the background is because it snowed here, so that's all the snow in the background lighting everything up. And hello, Janet in Dublin, and Lucy in London, and Millie and Cindy and Steph in Scotland, and Betty Jean in Kentucky. So hello to everybody saying hello. So where we're at is we're waiting for Kathleen to file on February 1st. So it is the 21st. So we've got 2 weeks, say. So Mark says, who did it? Well, Mark, who do you think did it? From what we're getting from Kathleen, so far, it looks like she's pointing at Bobby Dassey with an assist by Scott Toddick. But is she really saying that's who did it? Or is she just showing this is something that should have been looked into and wasn't? Just like she's talked about Ryan Hilgast before. So, but from a lot of what she's shown, it looks to me, things fit together to be Bobby Dassey. The only thing that Kathleen has said in the case that it's not that I don't believe it, because I guess if that's what the evidence says, but she's saying that police didn't plant the blood in the vehicle, and I understand why she's saying that, but I find a hard time believing that Bobby would use a Q-tip or whatever and get blood from Stephen's trailer and then put it in the car. So it makes way more sense to me that a cop did that. So that's the one thing in Kathleen's scenarios that I get iffy on. Scrolling to see if there's any other questions. Jenna says, I'm wondering if KZ tweet about the evidence destroyed was referring to Avery case. I don't think so. She's been working a lot lately on some case in Texas. So I think a lot of her tweets as of late has been pertaining to that. Mark says, who does the local community think committed the murder? Well, I think the local community is much like anywhere else. There are people that think Stephen is guilty, and then there's people that think innocent. So Do we have anybody that's on here that is from Manitowoc area that could say what you think? Stephen asked, are you confident he will get out? No, I am not confident he will get out. The only thing I am confident on is that Stephen is innocent. I think our legal system here in the States is horrible. And it takes Kathleen years to free somebody. So, and, I'm not trying to be negative, and it does not change how I feel about Stephen, in this case at all. I believe 100% that Stephen is innocent and he was framed. But our system is horrible. So I'm not confident he will get out. And I hate that. I hate it. Or in Brendan's case, they overturned his conviction at that one point. Yet he wasn't allowed out. So he was, as Brendan likes to call himself, the complete and innocent. So they threw out his confession, which is all they have on Brendan. And he didn't automatically get out while they decide what they're doing next. It's just horrible. Maybe things will change in Wisconsin now that there's a new governor and a new attorney general. So, but right now, no, I will not say 100% he's getting out. The only thing that I will say is he will not get out anytime soon. I know there was a rumor going around that he was going to be out in a month or so. That's just not possible with how our system works with you have to file this, and then the state has 60, 90 days, whatever it is, to give their response to that. And then the court has however many a time before they give their response, and then lather, rinse, repeat. So no, not anytime soon. And sorry, as I talk here, your comments start to scroll up and then I can't get to them. So Lily says, have you read the book? Which book? Are you talking about this book right here? Wrecking Crew? I actually just went yesterday to an event where John Farrick, who wrote this book, was talking about the book. And let me put my fancy schmancy microphone down. I had him sign this book that I'm going to raffle off to supporters. I just haven't decided yet how I should do it, because the only things that I say money-wise, if you want to throw money at this case, to either put it directly in Stephen's commissary or to give it to Kathleen Zellner. So, do I use this book to raise money for Stephen's commissary or for Kathleen Zellner? We've been talking about it a little bit in our little subgroup currently it's called Gossip Project, but it may be going back to its original name. So I haven't decided where that money should go. So, but yes, I have read the book, and I do recommend Wrecking Crew for anybody who hasn't read it yet. This is really, going over a lot of what Kathleen has done with the case. And then since John has written a lot on this case, as well as the Ricky Hochstetler case, which could have a connection to this case, he delves into things that you may not know about the area. So I do recommend reading this book. And wow, this cover feels really nice. Sorry, it has nothing to do with anything, but it's a nice satiny feel material. All right, sorry, I'll get back to your things. Um, Jack says Brendan's stepdad did it. I don't think that Scott Taddock killed Teresa Halbach. I think that he helped Bobby in some way. If it might just be to get rid of the body, is all he did. But I think that's a reason why Barb still stays with Scott, because Scott holds that over her of what he knows about Bobby. So, a lot of questions. We always get questions about Steven's parents and how are they doing. They're still doing the same. They're every day that goes by, their health, they're not getting any younger. So that's why it's really sad with how long this is taking to get Steven out of there. Because if you follow any of this case, you'll see that Steven's parents don't go visit Steven very much anymore because they just physically can't. It's hard to, drive to be in a car for that period of time when you're not in the best health. I mean, I'm 47, so I'm not a young pup. I'm old, but not elderly, I guess I'll say. And I have degenerative disc disease. So, I've got a sucky back. And when I visit two different people in prison, not Steven, and so I drive about the same distance. And you drive that distance, so you're in a car that whole period of time. Then when you're in the visitor's room, you're in a hard chair. And then you got to do that drive back. And so by the time I get home, I'm like wrecked. It takes a lot out of you. And then like the next day, I take the next day to recover. And so Alan, Dolores aren't able to go as much. So, they don't have the opportunity to see Steven as much as they would like. I don't know what Wisconsin is doing with video visits, because I know that's something that here in Illinois that has been discussed, that inmates would have the opportunity to buy an iPad, that of course they have to pay for themselves. And I'm sure it's, way more than we could just buy an iPad out here. And then the inmate would be able to purchase a video visit, which would cost $40. So not cheap, but it would be a way that Steven could visit with his parents. It's no more expensive than having to pay for tanks of gas to drive, 2 hours there, 2 hours back. And they'd be able to be home, and they'd be able to do that more than driving to visit him. And it's also a way for like, a lot of the Avery family, they love Chihuahuas, so Dolores has a few Chihuahuas, and it's something that, then the dogs could be on video at some point. And, if there are kids, so like Steven has grandkids that I'm sure he's never seen. Maybe, he could see his grandkids. So it would be really nice if he could start doing those video visits. Let's see. Steve says, Scott and Bobby, go where the evidence points you. Zellner is nothing short of a genius. When this does go down, there will be multiple people sitting where Steven is now, and Manitowoc County will be bankrupt. Good riddance. Yeah, everything that we're seeing from Kathleen right now points to Scott and Bobby. And Marie says, and he was scratched up. Yeah, Bobby had those scratches on his back that in one of Kathleen's recent filings that she had in there, that those aren't scratches done by a puppy. So, Felicita, is that how you say your name? Says, I don't think either of them did it. I think her ex-boyfriend did it. And I was on that road at one time. I think Ryan Hilgas helped Manitowoc get access to the RAV4 and to get the RAV4 to the salvage yard. So I believe that he and Scott Blodorn and possibly Teresa's brother, excuse me, thought they were framing a guilty man, that they had no reason not to believe cops when they say this is who did it. But we're in the middle of doing these depositions because of a wrongful conviction, and there's no way he's going to be found guilty. And so I think they wanted to make sure who they thought was guilty was punished for it. So I don't blame them for that. I think it's something that I would have done. You know, if I'm sure somebody hurt somebody in my family and they would walk away, I would do what I had to. So, but I think they should now be looking at all the evidence. I get that family and friends of Teresa don't want to keep living this horror, because at the end of the day, the thing to always remember is they lost Teresa. You know, Teresa is the victim here. All right. So if you're going to categorize, you know, she is the victim. So the Hallback family and friends are the ones that lost her. You know, Stephen and Brendan can still talk to their loved ones and get visits. You know, do we want to be in prison? No. You know, not saying that, you know, they're at Disneyland. But their loved one is gone. But I would want to know what really happened. So back then, you know, you didn't have all the eyes and the ears like we have since Making a Murderer. So I don't blame them for as this was going on. But once Making a Murderer came out, you have to go, what's going on here? And look into it. And I know the guilters, high guilters who are watching this, and you're going to talk shit about me. There's absolutely no evidence that Stephen did this. None. Nothing. So I would have to look into it for myself. Betty Jean says, petition the governor to move Stephen closer to his parents. Yeah, I don't know how that all works. And, you know, Stephen had been at one prison and then moved to another. So I don't know what determines where they go. I know here in Illinois, like there's prisons that, so like both of the people that I advocate for and visit, Kent Pellegrini and Melissa Kaluzinski, it's funny because they don't know each other, but they have both referred to me, and they're in two different prisons, that their prison is a cupcake prison. I'd never heard the term before. So the prisons they're in is if you don't do anything wrong while you're in prison, you're of no threat, that you get to go to a nicer prison, I guess. So I get then why you would be farther away if that's the prison that's, you know, the nicer prison where you're not a threat. And no fights or anything happen in either one of those prisons, because if you do, they're gonna boot you and that you go to one of the bad ones, I guess is how I'll word that. So yeah, I know Brendan was in one prison when Making a Murderer 1 first came out, and then he was moved to another one, and they said for his safety. So Millie says, wasn't there something floating about before about Teresa being in a mental institution? Was there any truth in that? I've only seen, Millie, people questioning that. I've never seen any proof that Teresa was in a mental institution. Laura, no news on Stephen's case. I just popped on for anything people wanted to discuss today. And we're just waiting for Kathleen to file on February 1st. Sorry, your posts are getting booted up. Lisa asks, are you related to the Averys? No, I'm not. I just run Stephen Avery Project. I am just a supporter. Dessa says, is there any progress, any news, as I have not seen any updates from Ms. Zellner in a while? No, all it was is originally Kathleen was supposed to file at the end of December. And then there was a pause put in that because then she submitted that she wanted to get the pelvic bone that was found at the Manitowoc gravel pit, that she wanted to do this new test on it, this rapid DNA ID test, where within 2 hours they would have the results on, is that human bone and is it Teresa? And the court ruled that, people misunderstood this ruling. They thought it meant that she cannot test that bone, but to put in words that I can understand, it was it just says that she either needed to stop the path that she was on in the current filing and work towards that, or continue on that path while then looking into the bones another way. So, and then she was given a February 1st date now, because now it puts the current trajectory back in motion. So now she has until February 1st for the filing that she was going to be turning in December. So she'll turn in her filing, and like I said earlier, then it's always in the state has, somewhere between 30 and 90 days to issue their response, and then the court has another 30, 90 days or whatever it is for their response. So it's going to be a while. But you never know when Kathleen will drop something on her Twitter. So, but she's also busy right now. She took on another case in Texas, so she's been working on that. And then another one of her clients, Kent Pellegrini, but Kathleen doesn't try Kent's case. Her partner, Doug, is the one that always does everything for Kent's case. So Kent's case, they're due to file tomorrow. So Doug will handle that. So Kent's case shouldn't cause any holdups with other stuff that Kathleen does. Alex, do you know if there will be MAM3? There's nothing official on that, but I'm sure there would be, because MAM2 was a big hit, and the case, there's still plenty going on. There's still stuff they could tell from part 1 and part 2 that's on their B-roll, because there's so much in this case that they can't include. And that's something I always think is funny about guilters, when they'll say, oh, it's a one-sided documentary, they didn't show all this and that. They can't possibly show everything. It's already 10 plus hours each part. So they can't show you everything, but they do give you well-rounded of both sides. They may say there's not, but there is. They do ask the other side to be a part of it, and they say no. So that's why you see their press conferences, so you can see part of their side. So I have not heard that they're doing any filming currently, but I'm sure there'll be a part 3. But there will be no idea when that will come out. Kathy Ann says, hopefully if the prison reform actually goes through, there will be room for Stephen to be closer to Mom, Pa, Avery. Well, yeah, that would be nice. Miriam says, it's unbelievable that the guys are still in prison. I know, but what's the number that Kathleen says that it typically takes her like 15 years to get someone out? And she's only been on Stephen's case since 2016, right? So, hmm. Rachel says, I would want to know what really happened if it was my child. Kathleen Zellner to free Stephen Avery. Yeah, I agree with you, Rachel. I would want to know. Um, oh, okay. Thank you, Stephen Avery Project, who was answering a question that I obviously didn't see. Kathy, and now it's gone. I couldn't get it. Sorry. Angel's listening from the toilet as her boyfriend gets sick of me going on about it. I hear ya. Um, Camilla says, sorry, have you talked about Ryan? I was talking about Ryan a little bit ago, Ryan Hilgas, that in my opinion, Ryan just helped in the cover up. Chris, one, what is the current theory for handing off the car key to be found in the home near the bookcase? Who is believed to have handed it off and to whom? What is the theory? And now it's gone, so I can't see it. I'm sorry. The key. Well, the key is Lincoln Colborn, right? It was Lincoln Colborn in the bedroom with the bookcase in this big game of Clue. Stephanie says, why are the judges denying the new evidence? They're not denying the evidence. They're denying that they're going to stop the current appeal for that. So Kathleen has to continue on with that appeal. She can still seek these bones. And, you know, Kathleen, way smarter than I will ever be. So there are the theories that that was done intentionally because Kratz tried this case with that pelvic bone was nothing to see here. It, you know, because it wasn't at the Rat Ant quarry that's right behind the salvage yard. It was at the Manitowoc gravel pit, which is on the other side of the quarry, so even farther away. And so it's nope. This it we don't even know if it's human. It could be animal. It's nothing. So what happened with that pelvic bone is they turned that over to the Hallback family like it was Teresa's remains. So by, you know, drawing attention to that pelvic bone and not, you know, so if Kathleen wants to do a test on it, well, she can't very well do a test on a bone that the family has buried like it's Teresa's remains. And why would they give that to the Hallback family if they said it wasn't Teresa? And it's a rule or a law or whatever you want to say that evidence, as long as somebody is incarcerated, the evidence has to remain in storage. So if DNA testing changes, you know, for appeals, you know, so that evidence has to remain there as long as the person is incarcerated. Yet you gave that bone to the Hallback family. So, oh, what a tangled web we weave. So she may have known the whole time that they weren't going to pause for this. So it's a way of putting it out there without putting it out there. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I find it very interesting, that pelvic bone, you know, and so we absolutely should, you know, testing should be approved at some point on that. But what all do you have to go through to get it? You know, so then are you digging up Teresa's grave to get that bone? You know, and guilters are really going to get upset about that if that were to happen. You know, so curiouser and curiouser. Vicky says, I never believed the DNA from sweat evidence, right? There's no such thing as sweat DNA. You know, that's what he keeps calling it. What they would mean is, your skin cells, because you're sweating, would be a way your sweat is transferring your skin cells onto that latch. But if you look into everything, and there was cross contamination on everything. So Stephen had that red Grand Am. So one of the lab guys or lab people had said that they had been in Stephen's Grand Am with gloves on, and then they went to that hood latch and didn't change their gloves, even though that's protocol. You take those gloves off before you touch anything else. So that guy was touching in Stephen's car and then touched Teresa's car. So, that's why all the evidence they say against Stephen, if you have a brain, there's evidence that shows that it doesn't point to guilt. They have nothing on Stephen that isn't suspect. The bullet casing in the garage, that everything in there has dust all over it, but not that bullet that you don't find for how many searches. And so this bullet went through Teresa's head, but doesn't have any they find a waxy substance that has something Teresa, which is obviously the chapstick they took. And then Kathleen has shown that there's wood and paint on there. And then she has shown you how they're always shooting at stuff all over the place there, that bullets were stuck in the garage wall. It's all stupid. Amanda says, that's so sad. This is the second time this man has done time for something he didn't do, and his parents are going to be dead by the time he does make it out. I don't ever want to think about that by the time Stephen is free, he will lose one or more of his parents. And if that's the case and that happens, then whatever settlement he gets for his wrongful conviction should be times 2. Does Brendan have a diagnosis of autism? Catherine asks. I don't know if he's ever been tested for that. He just has a low IQ is all they've ever shown before. But I believe that Stephen's IQ, isn't Stephen's IQ even lower than Brendan's? Sorry, I have to respond to this. Somebody planning a meeting and needed my answer if I was available a day. Bobby says, where's the big evidence like the blood? There, in my opinion, many other opinions, there's no big evidence. Nothing. Because like I said, everything they have can be explained away. Julie says, is Cuss Road on the other side of the gravel pit? Yes. There's, to get to Cuss Road, so the Cuss Road cul-de-sac, dead end thing, is like only a half a mile from Stephen's trailer. If you're to walk through the quarry. So it goes, salvage yard, quarry, gravel pit. Lena says Kratz is definitely bogus. Yeah. That's something that John Farrick talked about. I went to John Farrick, for people who are just joining us, who wrote Wrecking Crew. He lives a couple towns over from me, and he had an event yesterday to talk about writing his book. And so he said in his talks with, his interviewing people in the area, nobody wanted to be connected to Kratz. Nobody. So that Kratz has a couple media people, and that's it. Nobody wanted to seem like they were friendly with Kratz. So I found that interesting. Tabitha says they should investigate Manitowoc County, as the bones were found on their property, not Avery's. Right? It was a Manitowoc gravel pit. Joyce says it's also a way to postpone her deadline. She's shrewd. Yep. Kathy says if you didn't know, you can Chromecast jacks to your TV. Oh, creepy. Brian says, screw the guilters, dig it up. I'm with you. Bobby says, you have to dig it up. Lives are at stake. I agree. Millie says, I don't understand what poor Stephen has ever done for them to want him behind bars for life. Well, the Penny Bernstein case, which kicked everything off, is because of his cousin, who he had issues with. His cousin had been running around town talking shit about Stephen. Stephen did not a good thing, so I say this all the time. Is Stephen perfect? No, he did some bad things. So him chasing his cousin down the street and pulling her over and pointing a gun at her, bad. Cousin doesn't like him. Sure, she talked shit about him to all her friends. And now when Penny Bernstein is victimized and is telling what happened to her, Stephen's cousin's BFF was in that room and immediately says, that sounds like Stephen Avery. And from that point on, they laser focused on Stephen, put him away, and then when he's finally freed, now they don't want to have to pay that money, because it had been said that insurance said this was going to be, the people were going to be personally liable, not the big insurance company. So they wanted to make that go away any way possible. So did Manitowoc Sheriff's Department have a part in what happened to Teresa? Some people think that. I do not. Or what I believe is probably initially when this was first going down, that they also thought he was genuinely guilty. That, that I believe there's a lot of deputies, police officers, what have you, that thought he was guilty. They had no reason not to think he was guilty. They're not all part of this framing. So when, and they're not going to believe one of their own planted this stuff. So I think the cops that were involved in depositions, or the deputies, they're the ones that then are planting evidence, and they're seizing that opportunity. So Miriam says, is there a book? Never heard from that. Book is called Wrecking Crew by John Farrick. The Demolishing the Case Against Stephen Avery. You can find it on Amazon and for your Kindle and those kinds of things. I have this copy here. Let me find this page that I just had John Farrick sign. So it says, to supporters of Stephen Avery, thank you for fighting on, John Farrick. So I'm going to raffle this book off. But I haven't determined how I'm going to raffle it off. If the money would go to Stephen's commissary, or just go straight to the account that Kathleen has on her page for Stephen. So Gemma says, I would love to come to America and show my support for Stephen, but believe me, the UK is behind you, Stephen. Yeah, we get people every day on Stephen Avery Project who are brand new to the case. I can't tell you how many times a message starts with, I just finished watching Making a Murderer and I am angry. And then just all the different places from all around the world everybody is from. And Stephen he's aware of that he has a whole bunch of supporters, but there's no way for him to completely grasp just how big that is, because when he went in there, sure, we had internet and all that, but it wasn't like it is now. Facebook isn't what it is now. He doesn't even really completely understand what Facebook is. He always calls it just a website. So Jane says, I don't know how the bloody hell they get away with this. How are they sure they're Teresa's bones? The testing that had been done on the bones had come back saying that they were, because there was nothing that said they were Teresa's bones, correct? That it says that it's consistent with a female in Teresa's mother's family. So, and Steve says, we can't see you because of the window behind you. I know people said that, and I just said, that's good. You don't need to really see me. So I'm happy. I'm happy with that. But yeah, the window is because it snowed here. I'm in a Chicago suburb and we got a lot of snow this past weekend. So that's why it's, white out there. Betty Jean says, watch the movie The Oath about a gang of dirty cops that were against Stephen. And now it just scrolled up so I couldn't get it. So sorry about that. I need to read faster. Lily says, how am I related to the case? I'm just a supporter. And I run Stephen Avery Project. That's it. Oh, and I see now that one of the moderators answered that. Miriam says, what about the Innocent Project? Can they help again? He's got Kathleen. So it's usually one or the other. You're either going to get the Innocent Project or you're going to get Kathleen. So, and he has Kathleen. And the Innocent Project in Wisconsin, while they got him out the first time, as soon as the second time happened, they dropped him immediately. They scrubbed him from their website like they never supported him before. I'm shocked by the people who were so involved and know what happened to him the first time around that as soon as this case happened, bam, they're just by Penny Bernstein, who Stephen went to prison for the first time for allegedly assaulting. She right away took the side that he's guilty. I find it really disrespectful. It bothers me that people would jump on that so fast. Vicky says the cousin Stephen ran off the road was the wife to a deputy sheriff. Yes, that's one reason he was in their crosshairs. Anne says, hello, Anne. Betty June says, it's like the Reuben Carter wrongful conviction. Once a cop gets in for you, you are going to be hemmed and by truth or false deeds and lies. I need to put on glasses. Sorry. Michelle says, Sheriff Department was involved. I totally believe that. They're involved in some way. It's just the extent of it. Are they the cause for what happened to Teresa? Or did they just make sure everything pointed at Stephen? Nancy says, needs to make the next documentary season ending in Stephen walking out of jail. Well, I'll knock on wood for that. Admir says, if it was a straightforward case, it wouldn't have lasted this long. Well, look at all the all the other wrongful convicted cases. You see these people are doing 10, 20 years. So I guess nothing is ever straightforward. Looks at when you look at all the evidence and the stuff that Kathleen has released, it looks very straightforward to me. But we just don't work that way. Sheriff Robert shot here. I don't know what that means, Rob. Tom Davies says Bobby needs to have a lie detector test and or the brain test Stephen did. Yeah, so that whole brain fingerprinting thing, when I had first heard about it, saw it in Kathleen stuff, I'm just like, okay, that's really out there. I thought, but then when I actually saw it in Making a Murderer 2, it was like, oh, okay. Now I didn't think it was quite so wacky. Jane is talking about a raffle for the iPad. I don't know if Stephen is able to have an iPad. That's what I was saying earlier. It's something here in Illinois, but even here in Illinois, so like Melissa Kaluzinski was told that she would be able to buy an iPad, but then our outgoing governor just this past couple weeks ago, one of the final things he did is he yanked the ability for the inmates to get iPads. So like Melissa, we raised the funds for her to get an iPad, but now she can't get one. So, but they're saying they might be able to get them in June now. So she just is keeping the money in her commissary that was raised for her iPad, and she's going to keep it in there earmarked for the iPad for when she can get it. So I don't know if Wisconsin does that. I haven't heard of anybody doing a video chat with Stephen. So I'm going to guess they don't have that possibility to do that. And Miriam says, is it possible to send them both a letter? It absolutely is. We have a pinned post on Stephen Avery Project. You can see it up in the right-hand corner on the side there that lists the addresses on how to send letters to both Stephen and Brendan. But I advise you when you write a letter to make sure your return address, well, your return address has to be written on the outside, on the envelope outside, but also write it on the inside with your letter, because your letter is going to a prison. They are going to just rip open their letters because they read them. They don't care what happens to the envelope. So your return address could be destroyed. Stephen doesn't write back to a whole lot of people. He works in the kitchen, and then he does a lot of stuff on his case, looking into his case in the law library. And he's been burned 3 times now. So he's kind of leery about writing to people. So, but you don't go into this writing a letter to Stephen so you can, you want a letter back from Stephen so you can frame it and you have his autograph. If you're a true supporter, you're writing to him because you want to brighten his day. So, so write to him, not with the thoughts of he's going to write you back, just, write to him. And Kent Pellegrini and Melissa Kaluzinski both tell me they love the letters they get, that it truly does. They're like, you have no idea what it does to lift their spirits when, their case has been postponed again. And, they thought they were getting out just around the corner, and now there's this and that. And so just to get a letter, like Kent got a letter from one of our moderators here who lives in Australia. And he was like, oh my God, from Australia. This is so wild, So, yeah. So write to them knowing that you're doing it just to make them feel good, just for a few minutes. Rob says, I just wish we could stop talking about it and let him out. Yeah, I agree. That's my wish is for Stephen to get out, and that the state has to give him enough money that he can ride off into the sunset with his mom and his dad, and they can live a nice quiet life where nobody's going to bother them, and Steven can garden and fish with his dad and and have lunch with his mom, and Steven's able to find a woman that he can love, that truly loves him for him and not looking for some kind of celebrity status. So that's what I'm hoping for. Mickey says, I'm okay with not seeing you as long as you keep your snow there. You don't want any of it? Because you can have it. Betty Jean says, Teresa's mother needs to demand answers about her daughter. There is a void in her silence. I guess until you're in their shoes, you don't truly know what it's like. The only excuse I guess I can come up with for Teresa's mother is she doesn't want to look into any of this because she doesn't want to relive it. She doesn't want to think about it. So she's just going to believe what law enforcement tells her. I could totally believe that she's never even watched Making a Murderer. That's just how she seems to me. But, I don't know her, so I can't obviously know what's going on in her head. But I know a lot of Steven supporters get angry at the Hallback family, and I can't get angry with them because I don't know what it's like to be them and what they've gone through. Because no matter what happened to Teresa, because in my opinion, there's not even proof that she was murdered. So I really don't like when, people are like, oh, this horrible thing that happened to her and that she was raped. There's no proof anywhere of a rape ever happening. We just don't know. So I'm not somebody that thinks Teresa is some secret agent and is still alive somewhere. But no matter what happened to her, her mother lost her daughter. Her sisters that she seemed to be really close to lost their big sister who coached their volleyball team. That's sad. That's tragic. So I'm not one of those that jumps on the Hallback family. Even her brother, Mike, who I do think was part of setting up Steven after the fact. I think he believed this guy was guilty, and because law enforcement told him he's guilty, he lives a life of white privilege. And so in his world, you've got nothing to fear from police officers. So if the police officers tells you this happened, you have no reason to doubt that. So I don't blame them, but I'm just curious about now with so much that Kathleen has put out there on you kind of got to go, wait a minute, what? And look into that. I guess it's something Penny Bernstein could speak on as somebody who thought Steven was guilty and then later found out he wasn't. Claire says, Jax, have you spoken to Steven since all the crap recently started up again over money with the family? No, I haven't talked to Steven since the end of October. Sharon says they need to find the real person who actually done it and stop blaming this family, and don't Teresa's family want to know the truth? Wow, shame on them. Well, I already talked about that a little bit. I'm not going to go back into that. Betty Jean says the power within a band of brothers called Dirty Cops is powerful. It resembles a mafia system, right? Yeah, the blue line. Jeffrey says Bobby is too protected. I think if he's discredited as a witness, the case will fall apart. And I don't, and I can't read the last word, Jeffrey. But yeah, and so that's something else that Kathleen has shown. Bobby's their star witness, and now there's no credibility to it whatsoever. So Heather says here in Pennsylvania, they're allowed to have tablets. Well, that's good. Yeah. I know I've seen prisons that have had that. I've never heard about them having it in Wisconsin. Brandy says, what's the boyfriend's excuse as to how he got Teresa's planner? I don't think that's ever really been looked into. I think that's something that has just come out recently, right? That people really started to focus in, that Kathleen found that there's that Teresa had been on a call while she'd been driving around, that appointment was then written into that day planner. So, or that it was just the printed sheet, right? So yeah, why would Ryan have that? And so I don't think he's ever been asked about it. Kelly or Keely says address for Stephen. I know the moderators have been posting it throughout this. Gemma says Bobby seems dodgy, and I think that's why Brendan is in jail, because he's taking the rap for his brother. Well, Brendan absolutely is taking the rap for his brother, but I do not think that Brendan had any idea of what Bobby and Scott did. I do not think that Brendan is capable of lying like that. I think you would read it all over his face. I don't think he would be able to do that. Brendan got sucked into this because he was Stephen's alibi. And so I believe law enforcement, they wanted Brendan to say he saw Stephen do something. But since Brendan isn't understanding where they're leading him to, that's where then he's implicating himself, because he doesn't understand. Because even look at the part where it's like, what did you do to her head, Brendan? What happened to her head? Punched her, cut her hair, cut her throat. He has no idea. Okay, Brendan, just going to come out and say this. Who shot her in the head? Stephen. Because, that's what you're going to do. I didn't shoot her in the head. So if you're saying it's between me and Stephen, and I know I didn't do it, then, Stephen did it. And then why didn't you tell that to us before? Because I didn't think of it. So I know there are some people that think that the things that Brendan has said is because, all right, he saw that Bobby did those things. I do not, because I do not think Bobby or Brendan would then want any relationship with Bobby being in prison all these years. That resentment would build up. And not that Bobby goes to see Brendan very often. He goes when his mom makes him, so he'll make like the Christmas visit. So I truly believe that Brendan is an innocent lamb. And I find that incredibly sad, because Brendan and Stephen, while they're two different, because yes, Stephen has served 2 times now, but both of them have lost their entire adulthood, because Stephen went to prison when he was 22 and then was only out for 2 years before they put him back in again. Brendan was taken when he had turned 17, right? I believe he had turned 17 by the time he was taken. So both these men have lost their entire adulthood. They've been incarcerated the whole time. It's so horrible. Betty Jean says the involvement of family members of Stephen is a foothold on this injustice. Floki, is that how I say your name? Thank the gods for people like you, speaker. Sorry, forgot your name. My name is Jax. So I'm just, like I said, I'm just a supporter like everybody else that got sucked into this case when I saw Making a Murderer Part 1. And then I researched everything. And when Curtis Bussey, who started Stephen Avery Project, decided he needed to concentrate on his family, that I took it on. That's it. Diana says, my prayers he is able to get out to embrace his parents. This is just a tragic injustice in this state. Hear, hear. I don't know how you say that, TFR. I want snow. Yep, you can have some of mine. Tom says, when is In 3 coming to Netflix? Is that known yet? Nope, not known yet. I'm sure it won't be for a year or two. But there's plenty of other wrongfully convicted cases that you could look into. And it's something we don't typically do on Stephen Avery Project. We do try to keep this page only about Stephen's case. We do have a subgroup that we call, right now it's currently called Gossip Project. It was originally called MAM Gossip. And I had changed it to Gossip Project because I do like to discuss other cases. And people would complain about it being called MAM Gossip, that we should only talk about Stephen and Brendan. So I changed it to Gossip Project, but now people keep saying they like the original name, so we might turn back, blah, blah, blah. But something to be learned from Stephen's case, or not even to be learned from the case, but there are so many of these, so many people that are wrongfully convicted that do not get the spotlight that Stephen's case has, and look at the spotlight Stephen's case has, and he's still in prison. So it should, and he's got Kathleen Zellner, the best attorney in the world for if you're in prison for something you didn't do, and he's still there. So just think of all these other cases out there that don't have Kathleen Zellner on the case. They don't have Making a Murderer and Twitter and Facebook and Reddit and just everything that's out there of all these thousands of people, millions of people who tear into this case to find anything and everything. So, when there's not something going on in Stephen's case, look into any of these other cases. One of the ones that I work on a lot, my dog's begging me to go outside, is Melissa Kaluzinski case, which Kathleen Zellner is her attorney. And Melissa's case is, in my opinion, Stephen and Brendan's case rolled into one person, because Melissa we just had the 10th anniversary of her being in prison. She's in prison for a murder she didn't commit. She was coerced into a false confession after hours upon hours, and she has a low IQ. So Kathleen doesn't have to file for her until the end of March, but her dad, Paul, he's on this case like you wouldn't believe. And we just had a press conference a week ago because of the 10th anniversary, where Paul dropped some bombshells about the case, and more are coming. So that's a case I recommend people look into and support the Melissa Kaluzinski case. Paul says, why is the American justice system so corrupt And why is there no authority overseeing these states and punishing them? This case would have been thrown out straight away, and the Police Complaints Commission would also have sacked the police officers here in the UK. Plus, Paul, you wouldn't interrogate a juvenile by himself, like what happened to Brendan. You know, we here in the States all think of our country being the best country in the world, and our criminal justice system is awful. And I'm somebody that had no clue prior to making a murder. I didn't pay attention. I liked true crime stories. I would watch them, but when I would watch them, I took what was on those shows as that's what really happened. These are the facts. And so now making a murderer really makes me go, oh, wait, there's going to be more to this, because that's what making a murderer did for me. As soon as I was done watching part 1, I started looking into all the evidence, pulling up all the affidavits, all the filings, everything, because I'm like, okay, what wasn't in that documentary? And just the more down the rabbit hole I went, the more I found that Stephen and Brendan were innocent. But prior to making a murderer, I'm obviously a white girl. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. So, I'm not in the bad areas in Chicago. So I grew up in a world of white privilege. So if I was questioned by the police and they're going to question me on something that I didn't do, I'd be like, well, first of all, I know the whole thing that I'm entitled to an attorney, but I'm not going to ask for one, because if you ask for one, you got to be guilty. Why are you asking for an attorney if you're not, if you're innocent? That doesn't make sense. So I don't want to look guilty if I'm not. And I'm just going to explain to them real quick, and then I'll be on my way. And so making a murder really opened my eyes to where I told my son, who at the time Making a Murderer came out was 21. I think he was 21. I don't do math, so humor me, and he was 21. And my son is a good kid, and that's not me saying it from I'm a mom and I don't look at my child realistically. He's a good kid. But I was right away saying to him, if police are ever questioning you about anything, even if it's because he's got some friends that do some dumb stuff, so even if you're being questioned because a friend did whatever, you say lawyer, that's it. Just say lawyer, nothing else, because you just don't know. And I'm not trying to make it out like all cops are bad, because they're not. There's plenty of very good cops, but you got to protect yourself. Brian says, if Kathleen Zellner is so good, what's the holdup? We all know Stephen is innocent. It's because our system sucks. As just saying where it's, and then I don't get our system on how you have to go back to judges that already ruled against you. So now you have to bring it back to them and go, hey, admit you are wrong here and let this go. Judges have attitudes and not going to say they were wrong. So it's hard. It is so hard to get out the wrongfully convicted. It's real easy to throw them in there and so hard to get them back out. Marguerite says, I don't think they realized that Brendan would get sent down for so long, so they used him as a scapegoat. Right? I believe that it was since Brendan was 16, they believed that he would just go to a juvenile detention home and be released on his 18th birthday. So, but how horrible for Brendan. Amanda says, Brian Beale, it typically takes Kathleen 15 years to free them. Yeah. Betty Jean says, Brendan's mother controlled his emotions and created his cop talk. Barb prepared Brendan, but she never dreamed it would backfire so badly with him being convicted. I don't agree on that, Betty Jean. I think his mother did nothing. She was too busy protecting herself. She had just been busted too for big pot bust. And so she was making whatever deal she could so she didn't get in trouble for the pot, which incidentally, the pot wasn't even hers, it was Scott's. But she was caught with it. And I believe law enforcement used that against her. And so that's another reason why she kept leading her lamb to the slaughter and kept allowing Brendan to be questioned without an adult in the room. Yes, there were times that the police did interrogate Brendan without Barb's knowledge or consent, but that also, it's not a law. Cops can do that. I didn't know that until Making a Murderer, that they can go to your child's school and pull them out of school and take them to the station without you ever knowing. It's so wrong. Betty Jean says, is Bobby being investigated deeply now? Oh, God, no. Bobby's not being looked into at all. Except by Kathleen. The Dietering came out of retirement to question Bobby and Scott and Barb. Pretty funny how all those people will keep talking to the state who put Stephen and Brendan in prison, but they don't talk to Kathleen. But they just basically wanted to know from them what Kathleen was doing. And to tell them not to give Kathleen Bobby's computer. So, I was reading one and now it went up. Rob says, when is Kathleen Zellner talking to the press again? You never know. Just like, I'll pop on here to go live at times when I haven't given advance notice of I'm going to go live on this day at this time. Kathleen does that too, where she does those Q&As on Twitter, which is a really cool thing that, the supporters get the opportunity to question her. Brian says, in reference to the West Memphis 3 case, why can't Stephen use the Alford plea? Kathleen has been asked about the Alford plea before, and she says she doesn't go for an Alford plea when the death penalty is not in play. Alford plea is where you say you're guilty. So you plead guilty while maintaining your innocence. They want exoneration. So you don't want clemency, because I know that was something that was being passed around now that Wisconsin has a new governor, of clemency. Clemency also means you're guilty and it was time served. You don't want that. That means you can't hold the state accountable for what they did to you. So in West Memphis 3, Jason Baldwin did not want to take that Alford plea because he knows he's innocent and he wants to fight it. But Damian Eccles was on death row, and death row was literally killing Damian. He has lost a lot of his eyesight. That's why he's typically always in sunglasses. Light is really hard for him. So it was killing Damian. And you don't know how long the fight's going to last. So how much longer did Damian have? So Jason relented and took the Alford plea to save Damian's life. That's the part in it's the third season of Paradise Lost. I bawl at that part on Jason Baldwin doing that for Damian. I get emotional just now thinking about it. Wow, because that's huge. Kristen says our justice system is great if you're an illegal. Oh, I'm not touching that. I'm not getting into politics. Vicky says, I'm a former police officer. I could not sleep at night if I know an innocent person was in jail because of me. The actions of these officers are beneath the dignity of the badge. Thank you so much, Vicky. It is really nice to hear your perspective on things. And it's something, yeah, that like I always want to point out that it's the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department that did this. The Manitowoc Police Department. So when people say cops, it was not cops that did this. It was deputies. And there's a it's two different agencies there. So I don't want people being upset at the Manitowoc Police Department because they didn't do this. Or like when I was organizing a rally in Manitowoc, the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department is who harassed me on that and told me I couldn't have the rally there unless I paid $2,000. So then I got the ACLU involved, and it was just this big long battle. But when I dealt with the police department, because I would have to talk to the police department on security measures and all of that. The police department couldn't have been lovelier. They were ones, because like people were really concerned. They, hear the stuff like, when you're at a protest or a rally, you have to stay moving at all times. And if you stop moving, then they can arrest you. So people were really concerned about that. And so the police walked me through everything. And then they even gave me a certain spot where we could set up tables and chairs and tents if we wanted for people to sit. And so they were great. But the sheriff's department, Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department just sent me a ticket I got 2 weeks ago. I have a court date now with the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department that they're charging me for trespassing in Wisconsin when I wasn't even there. I wasn't there that day or that time. So now I have to spend the time to drive up to Manitowoc and go to court for this ticket. So the sheriff's department are the ones that are harassing people, not the police department. Michelle says, just got on. What is going on? Nothing. Just came on to discuss if anybody wants to talk about anything. I'll be on for 15 more minutes because I've been on for 1 hour and 17 minutes, and I'll stop this at 1.5 hours. Brian says, I know the Alford plea admits guilt, but he would be free, and like the West Memphis 3, he could try to get his name exonerated. Right, but that's not something that Kathleen or Stephen want to pursue. Right now, they think they can prove his innocence, and so they're going that route. So... Sky says, I can't take my eyes off window. Jesus, who else can't? Yeah, I know. That's snow and the light from the snow. So, I don't know. Rosie says, shut the fuck up Friday, LOL. Has anyone seen these lawyers that do the video for that? If not, Google it. It's hilarious. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Beverly says, I messaged the official page that Barb controls asking for permission to start a worldwide petition to take to the White House, if need be, demanding that Kathleen be allowed to present the new evidence she has found, and guess what? No response. I also asked if supporters could maybe set up a buy-sell page where supporters can buy and sell things they no longer need, and all the money would be donated to Stephen's parents. No response from that either. Okay, well, they should respond to you, but on the first thing, the White House can't do anything on Stephen's case or Brendan's case because they're state, not federal. So that won't do anything. And then, far be it from me to defend anybody in the Avery family, but besides Stephen and Brendan and Alan Dolores, but there's so much money bullshit that surrounds this case that it's hard to want to attach to any of that because there's just been so much shadiness and bullshit with all of that. So like even, the book that I have here that I'm going to raffle off, and it's like, I'm going to get attacked again because anytime I try and do something, I'm inevitably called a thief. I don't know. but I'm the one that paid $20 for this book and went to the event and had him sign it, and then I'm going to ship it and pay to ship it. And, so it's like, I don't know how I can be a thief when whatever. But, so I could see why they wouldn't want to do either one of those things, but they should respond to you and tell you that, not just ignore you. That's just ignorant. Nadine says, Stephen's mom and dad deserve a medal. They have been through so much. Bless them. It's so sad. Yeah. Rosie said, who had a pot bust? Barb. Oh, window Jesus. The guy in my window. He's looking into your soul. Oh my God, that's funny. So Phil says, isn't it right the court's insurance wouldn't cover the cost and the state would have to pay Steve? That's what they said. So I don't know what ends up happening with that, but yeah, that's what was said. Floki says, what's a pot bust? Marijuana. So Barb was caught with a large quantity of marijuana. So, but that went away. Leslie said, did they ever do polygraphs asking Stephen if he did it? I haven't seen anything on polygraphs. I seem to recall that he did and he passed, but then he's done that brain fingerprinting thing, which is supposed to be way better. But polygraphs, lie detector tests are not admissible. And I never care about lie detector tests because people can beat them or people can fail them just because they're nervous about having to do the lie detector test, period. So their heart rate's going to go up. So they're just not a good gauge on guilt or innocence. Paul says, I knew the second I saw Ken Kratz that he was a sex pest creep. Yeah, he's gross. Betty Jean, coming out of retirement is a red flag, and it happened more than once. Oh, God. Sky is obsessing about the window. Tony says, it was the cops. Free those boys. Yes. Kristen says, if he did the offered plea, he probably would get no compensation for the wrongful imprisonment. Correct. If you take an offered plea, you waive that right. So, yeah, there'd be nothing. And I'm not even sure what Stephen could do with his story because he has sold the rights to himself to Netflix. Netflix owns Stephen and Brandon. So I don't know, like if Stephen was going to start doing a talk show circuit or whatever, if he has to get permission from Netflix to do it. I don't know. Rob says, do you think Steve and Avery will be out in 5 years? I can't guess on that, Rob. I won't. He could be out this year. It could take another 10 years. I hope not. I wish he was out today. But until we have criminal justice reform, it's tough. We've got a little over 5 more minutes. Rosie says, Wisconsin deputies, our cops are kind of the same to the public, though, aren't they? Correct. Typically, there's incorporated areas and unincorporated. So the county sheriff's department usually does the unincorporated area. So they're basically the same thing. Loki says, too bad. I have to go to sleep now. It's late in Denmark. Is it possible to listen to this broadcast later? Yes, it is. Once I'm done, it will stay up on Stephen Avery Project. Just know that if you ask questions after it's been live. It's not live, so I'm not there to answer the questions. And so if you want to ask me something, you need to tag me so I know you're asking me something, or you can message Stephen Avery Project and one of the moderators can answer you, because the moderators here at Stephen Avery Project know this case way better than I do. So they're better to answer your questions most of the time than me. Rosie says, you got charged for what? They charged me with trespassing for a place I've never been, on a date I wasn't there, and a time I wasn't there. So it'll be interesting. William says, thanks for the info regarding 2 different departments. You're welcome. Yeah, I'm a facts person, and I don't want people ripping on the police department when they didn't do this. Vicky says, promotions are given in a sheriff's department often based on who helps the sheriff get elected and other help on the political side. Most city police departments have oversight by mayor's office and city council. Sheriff's department inherently corrupt because of the politics favors involved. Very well put. I never thought of it like that, but you're absolutely right. Where we just went through an election here and Wisconsin with new sheriffs, and yeah, so sheriffs are elected, cops are hired. So there you go. Bingo. Vicky, that was excellent on explaining the difference between the two. San says, can we do a live road trip when you go to court? I had so much fun the last one. I plan on it. Rosie says, trespassing where? In Manitowoc. Brian asked, how Steven's parents doing? They're the same. Leslie says, your dog sees a squirrel out the window. Yep. Rachel says, why doesn't the family of Teresa want justice for her? I think they believe they got it. That's the best I can figure. That, they're not, they're just thinking of Netflix as, the one-sided documentary that I truly believe some of them, I think her brothers have watched it. I bet you her mother has not even watched it. Can't bring herself to watch it. And so they think they got justice, that the guilty parties are in there. That's what I think. But again, I don't know them. Rosie says, please explain how they charge you with trespassing. Where? How can they? But I have no idea, Rosie. Yeah, the ticket was sent to me. And I don't live in that state. So whatever. Jennifer says, there's no justice for either Teresa or the Averys. Truth costs money and the state isn't willing to pay. Yep. Margaret, what do you think of the Mark Hadakut fundraising? I will stand by the only thing us here at Stephen Avery Project will support. If you feel the need that you want to give Stephen money, that you put it directly in his commissary or give it to Kathleen Zellner. We do not support any other fundraiser. I don't care who's doing it, whether it's a family member or somebody saying, I trust this person. I trust them because they came to the rally. I don't care. I don't care who they are, who they know. I don't understand why people just can't do it the simple way and put the money in Stephen's commissary account. He can take that money with him when he leaves if there's money left in there. So when you don't know how long he's going to be there, I get wanting him to have money in between his freedom and getting money from a civil suit, because we know that takes years. But upon Stephen's release, people are going to be throwing money at him. You don't need to be saving it now. He walks out those doors, I'm telling you, because Stephen Avery Project, we are the biggest Making a Murderer Facebook page, right? And so when Making a Murderer comes out, we are swamped with new people that just go crazy about the whole thing. And so when Steven walks out, people are going to give him money. So there's no worries about that. And Steven can stay with his parents, so it's not like he's going to be out on the street. And Kathleen will make sure he's taken care of, So, and I also know that there is a group of wrongfully convicted people that were freed. And you don't hear about them, but they have their own little club where when they get money from being wrongfully convicted, they donate a certain amount that gets put into this account that when somebody else joins their club, they help them. Here's some money to get yourself on your feet. Do you need help getting, a hotel, an apartment, something like that? So Steven will be taken care of. So there's no need to go send money to Australia to sit there for the next year plus waiting for Steven to get out. If you want to give money now, put it in Steven's commissary. We have a pinned post that tells you how you can put money in Steven's commissary account, and he can use that now to buy stuff he needs now in prison. Socks, snacks, toiletries, books, so just put it there. Or Kathleen, you can go to her website and she's got a page dedicated to Steven on there where she has a place where you could donate money there. So, and I know there are people who don't want to do that because Kathleen is pro bono. So why would we want to help with legal costs? Well, but why should it all be on Kathleen to front all the costs for all these tests and everything that a lawsuit costs? So, and she's not going to leave Steven with nothing. So if Steven were to reach out to Kathleen and say, hey, I've got no money in my commissary, Kathleen will put money in his commissary. So, I'm really tired. Sorry, I should turn off the sound, even though we're at 3:45 and I need to end this now. I get tired that money seems to be something that this case seems to be all about money. Who's trying to collect money, and is it shady? Is it not? I wish money wasn't the thing that was always talked about. So on Stephen Avery project, we try to just be case related and not get into any of the drama bullshit. So all I'm going to say, after just going on a little tirade already, is if you really want to give money, put it in his commissary or give it to Kathleen, and that's it. That's all we will support here. So, all right. I know there's still a whole bunch more that are asking questions, but I'm at an hour and a half here, and I've got some other things now that are popping up on my plate that I have to handle. So I'm going to end this now. I'll let you know that we do have another, so we've done where we've talked to, let me promote his book again, John Farrick. We did a live with John Farrick, who wrote Wrecking Crew, Demolishing the Case Against Stephen Avery. If you haven't read that book, you should get that book. So we did an interview with him. And then we also did one with James Didcock, who covers both Stevens and Melissa Kaluzitzky's cases. And we have another one that's in the works with one of Kathleen Zellner's people. I'm not going to say who it is, but they've been very busy, and they actually just emailed me yesterday because originally they wanted to do it in January, and now we're nearing the end of January. And they said that they just want me to know that they are still interested in doing it, but they've had a bunch on their plate, and as soon as their schedule opens up, they'll let me know. So we'll have that hopefully coming up soon. When Kathleen files on February 1st or before, we'll go live and discuss whatever it is that she filed. And then we go live a lot more often in the Project Gossip group, because it being a gossip group, we're able to cover way more stuff than we do here, because as I said, on Stephen Avery Project, we try to focus only on Stephen Avery's case, where when we go live in the gossip group, we will talk about the Jamie Kloss case, staircase, it veers off into a bunch of the different cases. And we also talk about a lot of the crap that surrounds Stephen's case that we don't do here on Stephen Avery Project. So, all right. And then be on the lookout for when I decide what I'm going to do to raffle off this autographed Wrecking Crew book, and if it will be donate money directly to Stephen's commissary or to Kathleen's page. I was leaning towards Kathleen's page since she's the cover of the book. So if money is generated from that, to put it that way, but we'll discuss it in gossip and decide what's the best way to go. And the pinned posts that we have, or sometimes it's called an announcement, depending on if you're in a page or a group, that has where you can write to Stephen and Brendan and how you can donate to their commissaries. So, and then if you ever have any questions, you can message Stephen Avery Project, and Patty is the one who typically answers all of our private messages for Stephen Avery Project. And so Patty will get you as soon as she can. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and stay tuned. There's always something going on, right?